Hey everyone, today I'm going to do a demonstration to kind of tie in all the concepts that we've learned about so far in Foods 1. So we've talked about kitchen safety, food safety, measuring, how to read a recipe, and different equipment. So I've got different equipment pulled out, I have all my ingredients together, I've read through my recipe, my oven is preheating, I have my baking sheets with parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper at home, it's not the end of the world. You can just grease your baking sheet. So I started first by reading my recipe the entire way through. So I read all the ingredients and their notes with them. So like my butter, for example, says it needs to be room temperature. So I've had that out, and it is now room temperature. Had I not read through the recipe, I would not have known that information. I also knew to preheat my oven and what kind of baking sheets I would need, that they needed parchment paper. I pulled out bowls and different things that I will need. So I am ready to get started. All right, so the first step is to preheat the oven to 350 degrees and line your baking sheet. So told you that I've already done that and it is ready to go. So next I'm going to, it says in a medium bowl, sift the flour, baking soda, and salt together. So I will measure my dry ingredients. So I need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So one thing that's tricky about recipes, this one says 1.5, but it's kind of tricky the way it's written. So there's been miscommunication before about, did that mean 1/2 cup or does it mean 1.5 cups? So it means 1.5 cups of flour. If it's written the other way, there would typically be a dash or some indication that you only need 1/2 cup and not 1/2 cup. They would not really write a recipe like that. So I'm going to do my 1/2 cup first. So this is my 1/2 cup measuring cup. I'm going to do the fluff and scoop and level method. So I'm going to drop my spoonfuls of flour into the cup until it's heaping over the top, and I will level off the flour. So because the salt and the baking soda all need to be sifted together, I'm just gonna dump it straight into my sifter. And then I'm going to use my 1 cup. Again, the fluff and spoon method so that my flour is nice and fluffy. Okay. Pull this off right into my sifter. All right, so I need 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So I will measure that. And one nice thing about a baking soda box, you can dip the teaspoon in, see that it's heaping, and you just push up against this flat part of the box right here, and it will help you level off your baking soda. So into my sifter as well, and then I need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that will go in as well. All right, so we know that the sifter from our equipment helps to remove any lumps that are in the flour. It helps to incorporate air, so I'm just going to turn this, and as I'm turning this, the flour and the baking soda and salt will all be sifted together. So you can see, well, maybe you can see, but there's lumps inside here that did not get incorporated. So I'll just keep spinning until some of those disappear. Get the flour off the side, and that is done. So easy as that to sift. Now I want to leave this alone because I don't want to shake it around a bunch or move it because it already has been sifted. So in another large bowl, for an electric mixer at medium speed, so I have my stand mixer bowl that I'm going to use. You're going to beat together the butter and sugars for about 2 minutes until smooth. So my recipe called for 1/2 cup of butter, which we know is 1 stick. So I will unwrap this and put it in my bowl. To measure My butter I have put into my mixing bowl, and I'm gonna measure my sugars now. So I need 1/2 cup of light brown sugar. So I've got a little bit left in this bag. I'm going to, now with brown sugar, I cannot just say that this is enough because it's a 1/2 cup. I'm going to need to pack the brown sugar. The recipe says firmly packed, so I'm going to take my spoon and push the brown sugar down into the measuring cup. Use my kitchen shears to open this new bag. And I will spoon a little more into my measuring cup and continue to pack. Making a mess, but that's okay. All right, so we have a very firmly packed half cup. And then I only need 6. I'm gonna add this in here with my butter. And then I need 6 tablespoons of regular granulated sugar. So I have my sugar, I have my tablespoon. Now remember, with sugar you can, if it's granulated, dunk in, have a heaping scoop, and then you would level off. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, so I will put my lid back on here. Alright, so now I will mix these on a medium speed with the butter that's already in there. Add the egg and vanilla and mix on a low speed. So I am going to add my egg, but before I do, I'm going to crack the egg into a separate bowl. So we talked about you know, not measuring things over your mixing bowl. So with your eggs, you always want to crack them into a separate bowl, even if you're really great at cracking eggs, because if you get any eggshells in your entire mixture, they're going to be a lot harder to get out, versus if you cracked it in a small bowl by itself, a lot easier to get those shells out. So I only need 1 egg, so I'm going to crack this into my bowl, and there are no shells, luckily. Put that in the trash. Now, food safety, I have cracked an egg, I have it on my hand, so now I'm going to wash my hands again to prevent any contamination that could be in this raw egg from getting anywhere else in the cookies. Nice and smooth. I will turn that off. Alright, so I have my egg. It says add the egg and vanilla and mix on a low speed until mixed in. So I need 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now this is where, when we talked about measuring, you would not want to do this over your bowl, because if I make a mistake, it will go on my table and not in my egg. So I'm going to measure just over here to the side. If it gets on the table, I don't mind. Alright, so I've got it completely full. It's starting to form a little dome around the top, which means you know it's a true teaspoon. You don't want any silver side or whatever color your teaspoon is exposed around the top, because then you would know that that is not a full teaspoon. Put the lid back on here. Alright, so Next, I'll add this in a low speed. So unlock, I can pull this up and slowly pour my egg and vanilla. All right, always make sure again you lock the top of your stand mixer, and I will put that on a low speed. And then once that's done, I will gradually add the flour mixture and mix until it is just incorporated. Do not keep mixing and do not over mix. So I don't want to over mix. I'm going to grab a rubber spatula so that I can scrape down the sides of my bowl. So I'm going to use my rubber spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl. Make sure that there's no butter and sugar mixture on the bottom that did not get mixed in with my vanilla and egg. So I'm going to use my rubber spatula, scrape down the sides, get down the bottom. There's some butter in there that did not get mixed in. So that is a good thing to use your rubber spatula for. So I have my mixture in here of eggs, sugar, butter, and vanilla. So I'm going to let this go just another second before I add my dry ingredients to make sure that butter that was in the bottom. Now when this is running, you never want to stick your rubber spatula into the bowl. You never stick your hands or anything else in there. You always want to stop it and lift before you work in the bowl. Okay, so our next step says to gradually add the flour mixture and mix it until it is just incorporated. So do not overmix. So I'm going to add this in probably 2 or 3 different sections. I'm going to take my rubber spatula out and add a little bit, put my top down and lock the mixer, and I'm just going to put it on a very low speed and mix it until it is incorporated. So as you can see in the mixer, there is still some flour on the side, but I'm going to cut it off, lift the lid for the top, add about half of what's left of my dry. It's hard one-handed. Put the top down, lock it, and then incorporate it some more. So the recipe very distinctly said, do not over mix. So we want to follow that rule, and we do not want to over mix. Okay, so I have my cookie dough mixed. I'm going to scrape down the sides one last time to make sure all of the flour and dry ingredients got incorporated. And here we have a nice cookie dough. So the next step is to add the chocolate chips and stir with a wooden spoon. Again, not over mixing, just until incorporated. So the recipe calls for a wooden spoon. I'm going to just use the rubber spatula because I already have it dirty, and a wooden spoon really does not make that much of a difference. So I'm just going to fold them in with my rubber spatula. It'll work just the same. So I have my chocolate chips. I've heard before that you don't measure chocolate chips with a cup, you measure them with your heart. This recipe calls for 2 1/4 cups of chocolate chips. So that is a lot of chocolate chips, but we're gonna do it. I have my 1/4 cup, my 1 cup, and I have it pretty full to the top. So I'm gonna add that in, and we'll just do 2 cups of chocolate chips. All right, so I'm gonna fold these in without over mixing. So we have a very good looking, nice, super chocolatey cookie dough. As much as I would love to eat all of this right now, I know because of food safety that I should not eat cookie dough because it has raw eggs, and there could be different bacteria and contamination that could come from that. So the next step in our recipe is to use a cookie scoop, or instead a very small ice cream scoop, to make our cookies on the baking sheet. We do not have a cookie scoop here, so what you can do is take 2 smaller spoons from your kitchen, and you just want to put a little bit of cookie dough on there. It's probably a little too much. And you're just gonna take the back side of 1 spoon and scrape it off onto your parchment paper. Now, parchment paper is nice. I'm not gonna have a super dirty pan when I'm finished. I'll have nice clean cookies that will come off the paper very easily. But parchment paper and wax paper are not the same thing. So don't think at home that you can use wax paper, because wax paper in the oven would not go very well. You may have seen someone try that before. So these are going to be very, very chocolatey. So I'm gonna continue to do this. I'm gonna do 3 on each row. All right, so I have 9 cookies on this pan, on my baking sheet, and they are going to go in the oven. All right, so the timer for the recipe says to cook small cookies between 8 to 10 minutes. Mine were pretty small, so I'm gonna do 8 minutes to start. I can always add more time to it, but I can't take any time off if I cook them too long. So I'm gonna do 8 minutes. Always remember to set your timer, because otherwise you will lose track of time and you might burn your cookies, and that would not be good. So got my timer set, and we'll wait for them to bake. So while I've waited for my cookies to bake, I went ahead and washed the dishes that I had. I'm not gonna get rid of my dish towel yet, my dishcloth, because I know that I'm gonna have my bowl to wash when I am done. So cookies are about to come out of the oven. All right, so the cookies timer is going off. I only set it for 8 minutes. The recipe said 8 to 10. I'm gonna check them and see how they look. All right, so they're getting a little brown around the edges. I'm gonna let them go for just another minute, and then I'll be ready to come out. All right, so the timer's going off again. I'm gonna check them, see if the other minute did the trick. And yes, they are beautiful. So we have nice brown edges, a nice soft middle. They look like they kept some good shape. So we'll let them cool. So you may notice that they did flatten a little bit once they've started to cool. But sometimes, you know, if your flour has a little bit of age, not that it's old or expired, but or if your baking soda's been open for longer than recommended, they might get a little bit flatter than if they would. But these are some pretty good looking chocolate chip cookies.